Hi there, Emily Midgett here with you today, and I'm super excited to be joining in the Pinkfresh Studio's January 2022 release. Today we're going to be using in our video some new supplies from Pinkfresh. We've got the Fancy Script Words foil plate and dies, Brighter Days foil plate and dies, and the Sparkling Diamonds cover plate, as well as a variety of inks from Pinkfresh Studio. I'll also be using my Holbein watercolors. They're Holbein Artists Watercolors. Now for today's project, I am going to be using the solid hot foil plate with the Fancy Script Words foil plate and dies. It creates kind of a neat reverse effect with the foil. Now the Brighter Days foil plate and dies, they are all in one piece, which I think is a really great feature. It means you can foil and die cut all in one fell swoop with your die cut machine. You don't have to tape down each individual die. Now I have hot foiled those images on some Arches hot press watercolor paper. It's a nice smooth watercolor paper, and we're just going to be doing some kind of loose watercoloring on our Brighter Days images. I'm starting out with Holbein's Quinacridone Magenta, which I think is a really beautiful shade of pink. It's a really bright, intense shade, and I'm just going to start out by adding some just a basic wash of color. This is just going to be our base layer. And I'm not going to be too terribly careful about making sure that it stays inside the lines, because one thing that really bugs me about using die cuts with colored background is when you've got a really bright, vivid background, and then you have the white edges on your die cut, and that just drives me insane. So I like to try to combat that by using colored die cuts. I'll either use colored cardstock, or I will use the same color of cardstock for my base, my background, as I will for my die cuts. So I'm just adding a very basic layer of that Holbein Quinacridone Magenta here. I am going back and kind of maneuvering the color around with my damp paintbrush. With hot press watercolor paper, because it is so smooth, it is easy for the watercolor kind of has a mind of its own, more so than it does with cold press watercolor paper, because it is so smooth. It's easy for the watercolor to just completely spread out and kind of look one-dimensional, which is not what we want. Even though we're doing loose watercoloring today, I don't want it to look all just completely one-dimensional. So for the second flower, I'm going to be using Shell Pink from the Holbein Artists Watercolor selection that I have. It's kind of a pretty peachy pale pink, and I'm again just doing a very light wash. Now, one thing to remember with watercolor is that it will dry lighter than it does when you apply it to the paper. So I work in layers. I try to make sure that I have plenty of wiggle room when it comes to adding more color, because if you add too much color to start, then it's hard to get those different gradations of light and dark, the different contrast, which is how you create the illusion of shadows and depth. Now for this next flower, I think it's a Dahlia. I'm going to be using the Holbein Lilac shade. It's a really pretty kind of pinky lavender purple color. And just adding a very simple wash of color. It's very easy with these kind of loose, nebulous images to just do a very simple wash and then add a few details of shadow. So with the daisy, I'm going back and I'm adding some extra vibrant color to the petals that are behind the top petals. You can tell that a petal is on top by the fact that you can see the entirety of the petal. It's not tucked behind. It's not, you can see all of the edges of that petal. So I'm going to work in lots of layers today. Because these watercolors do dry lighter than when you apply them, it's very easy to add lots of different layers of color. And with it seems that the Arches hot press paper, it does seem that the color dries a little bit differently on the Arches hot press paper. It does seem like you use a little bit more water with the hot press. At least that's my experience. The cold press, it seems like the watercolor behaves differently. So it's just all depends on your personal preference. I use the hot press paper today because I wanted to have that nice smooth surface for the foiling. So normally my preference would be to use the cold press paper. and get that extra texture. Now here I am again, I'm coming back in with another layer of that really vibrant, intense quinacridone pink. Quinacridone, I don't remember, it's quinacridone magenta maybe. Too many different shades of pink in my arsenal. I'm adding just some extra layers of color just where those petals are tucked underneath another petal, just to add a little bit of extra contrast and a little bit of extra depth to show that those petals are in fact behind another. So they're a little bit shadowed. Now for the foliage, I'm using Holbein Artists Watercolors Green Gray. And again, I'm just adding a very light wash to my background all the way around, not caring about the edges because we're going to die cut that and you're not going to see those kind of mottled edges. Again, adding some more layers of color to my daisy and to my dahlia and to my, I'm not sure what that other kind of flower is. It might be a wild rose. But just going to keep adding. I do mix the colors here. I mix the quinacridone magenta with the shell pink. I mix the a dark purple with the quinacridone magenta to add some more shadows and depth of color. You just kind of play with what's on your palette. I've heard it called palette mud before. You just kind of play with what you've got left on your palette to get those extra little touches of shadow and depth on your finished watercolor piece. So now we're going to move on to the background. The background is using the Sparkling Diamonds cover plate die. It's a brand new die from the January 2022 release. I'm going to do some ink blending with Candy Violet, Ballet Slippers, and Peach Fuzz inks. These are three of my favorite shades from the Pinkfresh ink line, and they blend beautifully together. And I've got a piece of cardstock that's a kind of a creamy color. It's very similar to the shade of white that from the Arches hot press paper. I had originally thought I was going to do some tone on tone, but I thought I would make a pretty blended background. So I'm just using, those are some ink, some stands from the Ink Stand from Brienne Loveland, her family's business. And I'm just using some Hero Arts ink blending brushes to get some nice soft ink blending. And I love how the ink blending really highlights the beautiful background design on that Sparkling Diamonds cover plate. I think that really helps to highlight that really pretty stitched background. So I'm just adding, that was the lilac and the ballet slipper, and now I'm adding Peach Fuzz in the center. And you can see I got a little heavy-handed with one of those spots, but we're going to cover that up with some die cuts, so it doesn't really matter. So now we have the blended background finished. I'm going to add some splatters with some metallic watercolors from, I have no idea how to pronounce Ayuil they're from Etsy. That's all you need to know. The name is on the screen. You'd get some water in your metallic watercolors, and then you just kind of splatter. There's no real rhyme or reason, and you just keep adding splatters and water until you are satisfied with the splatters that you have in your background. Now here is our finished watercolored piece. I am going to use the coordinating die for the Brighter Days foil plate and die set. It's all one piece, so you just have to tape it down one time in one spot, and it cuts all of your die cuts out. I think that is just such an ingenious set. It's an ingenious suite of products. They all work beautifully together. So now I'm going to be die cutting a vellum oval from some blanket stitched oval dies, and I'm going to use an edger die, kind of a lacy edger die. This is using the negative piece from one of my foiled pieces that I used to create the sentiment die cut. That solid hot foil plate die cut, or foil plate, is just an incredibly amazing piece of crafty machinery. It allows you to get so much more use out of your hot foil pieces. It makes me feel so much less wasteful. I use that thing for every single thing that I hot foil. I create the background, solid hot foil background. And then I just keep them and save them for a rainy day. So now we're assembling the card front. I am trimming off pieces of foliage that kind of would be tucked behind, so that you wouldn't see them, so that they don't go to waste, those watercolored pieces. So now we're just going to start, assembling here. I'm trimming off another little piece of foliage, and I can use those anywhere I want in my assembled bouquet. So I'm going to use some Hero Arts liquid glue to adhere my, my foil border piece, and we're going to start assembling the card with some foil tape, or some foam tape, I'm sorry. I am going to use some low-tack washi tape to kind of hold this bouquet together, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to adhere my foam adhesive. And using the foam adhesive and kind of having the solid die cuts help to cover up that adhesive on the back of the vellum is a sneaky way to kind of add adhesive to your vellum, because vellum can be tricky sometimes. And so now I remove the release paper and I'm flipping it over and I'm adhering it onto my card front. Remove those little pieces of washi tape, and I've got some foam for my foiled fancy script words die cut as well. I'll flip that over and adhere that onto my vellum oval. That vellum oval helps to kind of soften the area behind the sentiment so that that sentiment has an opportunity to really pop. Now for a finishing touch, we're going to add some of the Essentials gems, Pinkfresh Essentials gems in a lovely shade of lavender that coordinates with our card colors. And I love the colors on this. It reminds me of kind of a soft pastel springy sunset. So you can see lots of shine from those foiled pieces, and some sparkle from our metallic background splatters. So I really appreciate you guys watching. Thanks so much for joining me today. And if you want some more specific details about my card, you can check out the written explanation over on my blog at emilymidgett.com. And if you liked this video, please don't hesitate to follow along with my channel for more content coming up, and give me a thumbs up. So thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.